some of these protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza, they might as well hold up signs saying chickens for KFC.
How about that? Benjamin Netanyahu working the room yesterday and delivering a pretty good line. More than one pretty good line. It was a pretty impressive speech, if you ask me. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show. Second hour kicking off here. Mike Opelka in for my buddy Chris Plant, who's on vacation. He deserves it. You knew he was going. And we'll try and uphold the fine standards of this program. What a day yesterday. You had Netanyahu speechifying in a joint session of Congress with a bunch of people, whiny Democrats who didn't show up. Nancy Pelosi among them. Nancy Pelosi did not attend the speech, but she thought it was incumbent upon her to put out a statement that mocked it. I want you to think about that. Nancy Pelosi didn't go to the speech, didn't think it was important for her, Speaker Emerita, to attend the speech, but she found time to call it the worst address by a foreign leader to a joint session of Congress ever. Now, she does have credibility there because she's old enough to have seen most of the addresses to joint sessions of Congress by foreign leaders. That's how long she's been around. What a... watch yourself, Michael. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats who did attend, I have to say, we're going to have some fun later because Rashida Tlaib, one of the squad members, thought she was extra clever. And she brought a little sign, like it was about the size of a ping pong paddle or one of those things you get when you go to an auction and you hold up your number. And she had little messages on it, almost the kind of thing that we, in the 80s, people had in their cars when they were driving. They'd hold up a message to someone in traffic and either give them a flirty message or a finger kind of a message. But Rashida Tlaib had a sign, and it backfired on social media. She had a sign on one side, it said war criminal. On the other side, it said guilty of genocide. And the internet, which is just so amazing, especially since Elon Musk took over Twitter X and has allowed free speech to live, the internet has responded. And there are some brilliant statements. We'll get into that. And, of course, last night was the big night. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., our current president, did not resign as I had predicted he would. And I didn't win the big bet I had placed on whether or not he would resign. I knew in the middle of the afternoon it wasn't happening because it would have leaked. You can't keep anything a secret in Washington. And if Biden was actually going to step aside and Kamala would have been sworn in on Friday, it would have gotten out. But it didn't. And so we had that boring 12-minute little speech from Joe Biden. It just felt so terrible. I actually felt sorry for the guy. I know I shouldn't. He's going to live in a beautiful retirement for as long as he has left in his beach house in Lower Slower, Delaware. They're wealthy now beyond their dreams, and maybe they're just holding out. Maybe Joe's just holding out for the right number. Over the weekend, somebody asked me on Sunday morning on the golf course, hey, Mike, do you think that Joe Biden's going to resign today and step aside from the campaign? And I said, it depends on the number. And they went, what do you mean? The votes? No. It depends on the buyout, the golden parachute, the handshake that says, here, Joe, here's the check. You can go now. And apparently they got that going. And then we heard last night the reason why, but we didn't hear the reason why. There was no reason why given last night. Not a one. Just Joe Biden doing a little bit of an endorsement of Kamala Harris. And now the powers that be in the mainstream media are working to scrub the internet and their own records of Kamala Harris and what she has done, not just as a member of this administration, but in her previous gigs in politics, her previous jobs. What has she done? what has she said? It's going to be harder and harder. So I know a lot of us are gathering and collecting things that Kamala Harris has said, collecting statements from Kamala Harris to share with you so you can know who she is and what she promised and what she dreamt of doing, because it isn't living up to the Constitution. It's downright communism, beyond socialism. She is a pretty much avowed and dedicated promised communist, talking about the things that she would do and how we want equality, but not everybody starts in the same place. So we have to make sure that it happens. We have to give some people a little assistance. We have to give them a little bit of help. And yes, those videos do exist, and they will be played, and I hope the Trump campaign uses them ad nauseum and make sure that everybody hears them. Mr. Trump this morning was on Fox and Friends, and he gave his analysis of the speech. I thought it was pretty spot on.
It was not a good speech. The look, the sound, the voice, everything. And, it's so phony what's going on. I mean, the press is it's so fake. Anybody can see it was a problem. He's a problemed man. Should he stay? I guess that's up to him, and it's up to the people. And I don't think they should use the 25th Amendment. You have not long to go. We have 4 months now, and then he's got another month and a half. But I will say this, the world is in a very dangerous place. I think if he goes, she then takes over, and she's worse than he is. I really believe she's a San Francisco radical. She's actually, I think, a much worse candidate than he is, and she's not doing very well in the polls, considering she's got a little birthday present.
Yeah, she got a birthday present bump in the polls. And you have to believe that some of the bump, some of the jump in the polling data was just because Democrats were so disheartened by Joe Biden. The guy had record low approval ratings. He was trailing in every swing state. It looked so crazy. And then suddenly he's gone. So, there's elation. Suddenly the Democrat voters feel like, well, maybe we got a chance. So you're saying there's a chance? She didn't get one vote in the primary season. And that has to be rankling some of the members of the Democrat Party. Not everybody was in for Biden, and there are a whole bunch of them who didn't like Kamala Harris. Let's remember, her numbers were worse than Joe Biden's numbers among her own party. And there are plenty of Democrats. Gavin Newsom, 2 years ago when Joe Biden was out of the country, Gavin Newsom was in the White House measuring for drapes. He was there sniffing around. Pritzker in Illinois wants the gig. Shapiro in Pennsylvania would like the gig. There are myriad governors and senators who are raised their hands. We just played Elizabeth Warren a few minutes ago. They'd all like to have that opportunity. And I would venture a guess, if Bernie Sanders felt like he had a chance, a shot, he'd step up, because remember, he's the guy that Biden just nosed out to get the nomination. He's the guy that Clyburn kicked to the side in order to put Joe in there. So we'll see what happens. Donald Trump talking about Biden leaving the race and how it happened. And I think Donald Trump understands. You got to remember, Mr. Trump, yes, he is a Republican, a former Republican president, hopeful again as the Republican president. But for decades, Donald Trump was an independent or a Democrat in New York. And the Democrats are quick to remind you that over 12 years ago, Trump wrote a $5,000 check for Kamala Harris to run for office in California. And he tells it for years that he'd been writing checks for candidates on both sides of the aisle because as a business person, that's how you get stuff done. You have friends on both sides of the aisle. This morning, Mr. Trump on Fox and Friends talking about Joe Biden leaving and how it happened And I think Mr. Trump understands, because this was a corporate takeover. This was a palace coup, if you will.
Well, I think it was a coup. They didn't want him running. He was way down in the polls, and they thought he was going to lose. They went to him and they said, you can't win the race, which I think is true, unless I did something very foolish, which I wasn't going to do. And I think he was so far down, and they said, you're not going to win, and you're not in great shape, and you did poorly in the debate. I think the debate started everything. That really started the fall if he didn't have the debate. And remember, they challenged me. I didn't challenge them. They said, let's have a debate. They gave me everything I didn't want, from Jake Tapper to everybody else in CNN. And, I said, I'll take it, because I was surprised that he was willing to debate. So we debated. It didn't turn out well, but it really began from the debate. And the ratings, his approval numbers went very bad. And I was beating him by a lot. And all of a sudden, you could see what was happening. They were trying to do a coup. And I have it from very good information. I know a lot of people on the other side, too, that they went and they forced him out, between Pelosi and Obama and some others that
right.
You see on television. It was interesting. I'd watch them on television, and they act so nice. Oh, yes, we love Joe. We love Joe. Behind the scenes, I know for a fact they were brutal.
Yeah, they were stabbing him in the back. Of course they were. Anything to retain their power. And if it means throwing Joe down the staircase, pushing the old guy down the staircase, that's the answer. So what about the next step? Donald Trump has to face off against Kamala Harris. He was asked earlier in the week about debating her, and he's all in. He would be happy to debate Kamala Harris. And I saw Mr. Trump saying that he would like it to be on Fox. He doesn't want to do it with NBC News, and I think he'd be wise to hold out and get that concession. But here was Donald Trump asking or answering if he's worried about taking on Kamala Harris. Is he worried?
No. And she also wants to defund the police, and she really wants to do it more than any other person. She's the most radical person probably that we've had in office, let alone the office of the presidency. She was a horrible campaigner when she ran. She ran against Biden. And I thought he was terrible, but she was terrible. She was horrible. And she was the meanest person up there. She was meaner to him than anybody else. She accused him of being a racist with the buses, if you remember. She was the meanest person, but not a very good debater, but nasty, just nasty to him. And then when he chose her, I said, how do you do that? A person treats you so badly. He was treated so badly during the debates.
Yes, he was. And Kamala Harris in the very first debate basically called him a racist when she did that stunt about the busing. And she was ready for it. It was a scripted, staged event in the very first debate. And there were credible reports from backstage at that first debate that Jill Biden was not happy at all. And we know Lady McBiden is the one who's really in charge of what Joe does and does not do in the final analysis. It is amazing they ended up being together and ended up winning. I've got more of Mr. Trump and what he said on Fox News this morning. It was a fascinating interview. We'll get some more clips from last night's very brief address from Joe Biden, which really didn't show anything other than a pitiful, aging old man who didn't give us any answers. And we have many of your calls because there are some very interesting questions being asked on the call screening lines. I'll get to them, I promise you. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
You're listening to The Chris Plant Show.
It is The Chris Plant Show. Chris is on vacation. It's me, Mike Opelka, sitting in for my buddy. And yes, we are friends. It goes back a long, long way into a suburb of Chicago. And a long, long time ago. We have so much to get to today, and so many of you have been waiting patiently. So let's get a couple of questions and thoughts in here on the last 24 hours, busy 24 hours. I haven't even gotten to the FBI hearing yesterday because, wow, I thought that was pretty consequential as well. Let's start with Jim in Arkansas. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
You know, you do such a great job filling in for Chris when he's gone that I think he should sponsor you on your own sea cruise when he gets back. But that's not why I called.
There are a lot of people who'd like to put me on a boat and push me out to sea, Jim. A lot of them.
No, if you guys were both gone together, it'd be a real void on morning radio. But anyway, that's not why I called. So I have a question I want your thoughts on. I haven't heard anybody talking about. If the assassination attempt on President Trump had been successful, would the powers that be, do you think, have still forced Joe out of the race?
Wow.
That would have really shaken things up.
Well, first of all, the assassination attempt really shook up everything. And I also think that expedited the push to get Joe out of there because it elevated Donald Trump on so many levels. There were so many people who saw the assassination attempt and went, oh, my God, someone is really trying to get this guy out, and why? So it looked like it was more of a sure thing. Now, it's kind of a curious thing. I'm one of those people who believes hypothetical questions only get hypothetical answers, but you have to do that wargaming. I think the ultimate goal was to get Joe out before the convention or just after the convention. I kind of felt like that all along. I've been making this statement for over a year that I didn't think either one of these guys was going to make it to Election Day. And in Trump's case, I thought it was going to be the legal process, the lawfare. And thank God he's been able to fend off most of that. And in Biden's case, I thought it was his party because the cognitive decline was so great and so fast. And every day was the best day Joe Biden was going to have for the rest of his life. And it was getting worse and worse. So I felt like the party was pushing Biden out and the Democrats were pushing Trump out, trying to lock him up. So I don't know if Donald Trump, God forbid that would have happened or somebody tries it again. I think it's now it's a moot point because he's out. But the real question, I think, is does Kamala actually end up being the nominee? And there is a groundswell, albeit a quiet one, now developing among Democrats that say, we didn't vote for this. And you can't let a group of really rich people decide what we, the people, want. We'll dive into that a little bit more. Plus Netanyahu, plus the hearing on the FBI. It's Opelka in for Plant on the Chris Plant Show.
This is the Chris Plant Show.
Welcome back to the Chris Plant Show. Chris is on holiday, as our European friends would say. He's on a holiday on a boat somewhere. And so is Michael Piercy, which is kind of cool that they're getting to go on this same cruise. Jeff Wolf is keeping me on the rails, and Jane's on the phone. So it's a busy day here, and we appreciate you joining us. A lot of people are bringing up the point that the left and their friends in the mainstream media are trying to erase history or rewrite the history of Kamala Harris. And it's really not going to be that easy to do. And we owe a debt of gratitude to Elon Musk for buying Twitter X and keeping it a free speech area. The left is freaking out because they literally are trying to hide as much about Kamala's background as possible. But we're seeing videos pop up everywhere. And I just want to share with you one little montage of Kamala Harris that is from a Twitter account called End Wokeness, which I endorse that philosophy. End Wokeness put together a little a little montage. I'm not going to play the whole thing because you get the idea pretty quickly. But this is who Kamala Harris really is. And she said this opening part when she was vice president. So it's not like this is something from back in her early San Francisco liberal Senate days.
It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more.
Now, just that line, just that 7 seconds of Kamala Harris tells you all you need to know. We have to make sure everyone ends up in the same place. My friends, that's communism. And the fact that she's saying some people didn't start in the same spot, that they're going to need more, that's redistribution. But she's not done there.
Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place.
So that's the goal. And this goes on for another minute and 10 seconds. And it says the same thing over and over again. And that is that message of the Democrat Party. And this truly is the core message. If they were really being honest with the voters, this would be the platform for the Democrat Party in their convention. This would be the statement. This 7 seconds. All right, I'll give you an extra second of it. 8 seconds of Kamala Harris, the now presumptive nominee of the Democrat Party.
It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution.
Equitable distribution. And that is going to infect every part of their thinking. It is going to put Democrats on a, if they get control of the White House, if they maintain control of the White House, regain control of the House, keep control of the Senate, you know they're going to be looking at imposing equitable distribution on every American. And every American needs to know this. Every American needs to hear this. I think at their core, every person wants what they've earned. And we don't live in a country that these Democrats are talking about that was 100 years ago or 150 years ago. We live in a country, I'm looking at the Olympics and what's about to happen in Paris and the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games. And look at our Olympic team. Look at the makeup of our Olympic team. Those people are there because they accomplished something. And people of different races were not given advantages in the swimming pool or on the track. No, they accomplished at the same level of competition as everybody else. And the two flag bearers for our country, the two people that are going to be leading the American delegation into the Olympics, LeBron James and Coco Gauff. If you don't know who Coco Gauff is, she's a young black female tennis player, a phenomenal young lady. You've got, I think there's almost 20 years difference between the two. So if America's such an awful racist place, why are the best athletes in our country, the two leaders of the best athletes in our country, African Americans carrying the American flag into that stadium? You can't tell me America's a racist nation, but if you dare question Kamala Harris, you'll be called a racist and or a sexist. I had a couple more clips from Donald Trump from this morning. Donald Trump was on Fox and Friends this morning reacting to both Joe Biden's brief address last night. I think still my favorite point of the media analysis of last night came from John King on CNN. I really think he nailed it.
He didn't say he was stepping aside because he had decided, it was time. He said he was stepping aside to unify my party. That is the president eating his peas.
Eating his peas. You got to eat your peas if you're going to get your ice cream, Joey. Eat your peas. Tell everybody you're stepping aside, and you're stepping aside for unity. Sure. And after that speech, Donald Trump, early this morning on Fox and Friends, was reacting to the speech and also to Kamala Harris and her attacks on him. When she's been speaking in public, one of the talking points the Democrats are using right now, they're trying to paint Kamala as this super prosecutor, that she's now going to come in and prosecute the case against Donald Trump. You've heard that exact phrase on CNN and MSNBC already. It started happening on Sunday. And Kamala has now started using images of Donald Trump, his mugshot, in some of her ads. Donald Trump reacting to Kamala Harris's attacks on him.
Well, I think it's disgusting, and I get a kick out of one thing. They say, sir, be nice. You just got hit with a bullet. Maybe he's changed. Be nice. And I'd love to be nice, but I'm dealing against real garbage. When you hear that, they've weaponized the justice system against me. They've indicted me 4 times. They've pushed other lawsuits onto me. It's never happened in this country. This is like a third world country, what they've done, a banana republic. Every single court case that I have is pushed on by them.
That's true. I do believe there was a White House connection to many, if not all, of the cases brought against Donald Trump. Coordination. We saw it in the Georgia case where Fani Willis and her lover, who she hired at $600,000 a year, were traveling to Washington, D.C. and visiting the White House. Do you think they were going there just to get a tour? Or they were getting legal advice from the White House on how to deal with Donald Trump? And but for an aggressive media and people in the area pointing out the scamminess of the prosecution and this Fani Willis, it is just amazing to me that this thing is, and I'm very thankful that it looks like it's dead in the water. At least it feels that way. Donald Trump continued talking about Kamala and the DOJ and the attacks on him.
He weaponized the United States Justice Department against Donald Trump for purposes of hurting their political opponent. And so far, and I think long term, it's had a positive effect. My poll numbers are high. They're higher than they've ever been. People don't like what they're doing. They weaponize it to go after a political opponent. Now, and she was very much in charge, and she was a prosecutor, but she was a failed prosecutor. She put a lot of people in jail that should have never been there. She put people in jail that were political enemies. She's bad news. She's a radical left, not very smart person.
So Donald Trump is not putting the gloves back on. He has taken the gloves off, and he can't wait. After seeing the ads against him from Kamala's team, I think Mr. Trump is salivating. And I don't think, I know a lot of people are saying, well, he can't be too tough on her in the debate because he'll be tough on her. No. Those days are over. Those days are over. Mr. Trump, I've got one more great clip here. Mr. Trump was also asked about his running mate, J.D. Vance, because since Joe Biden has stepped aside and Kamala is now the presumptive nominee for the Democrats, barring anything happening, and if she gets Barack Obama's endorsement, it's almost a fait accompli. But if Kamala is the nominee, then who is J.D. Vance going to face off against? And we all believe that part of the political chess game here is to pick a running mate who will help you in states where you need help. Maybe it's a state that is a swing state. Maybe it's a state that is connected to a state that's a swing state. J.D. Vance from Ohio had some political capital in both Michigan and Pennsylvania. He's also a guy with military background. But now that Kamala is not the running mate, but the candidate, who she picks might have an effect on the conversation about the running mate that Donald Trump has chosen. And he was asked, does he have any second thoughts? Any regrets about choosing J.D. Vance for that spot?
He's fantastic. Yeah, no, it wouldn't have mattered. And I thought she was probably going to happen anyway, because I knew there was a palace coup going on, and I assumed that she'd be probably getting it. She had the advantage. So, yeah, it wouldn't matter. No, he's doing a fantastic job. He goes around. He's essentially for the worker. He's seen the worker be horribly abused and taken advantage of, and he's for the worker. That's what his book is about. Right. That's where his feelings are.
Gotcha.
No, he's for the worker. No, he's great. He's doing a great job, and he's been very well received.
Yes, he has. A great rally in Virginia the other day. Long lines. I think that was Tuesday. Yeah, very long lines. So Mr. Trump, happy with his choice, and I can't wait to see a debate. He was asked earlier in the week if he would debate Kamala Harris.
If Kamala Harris does end up being the Democrats' nominee, will you commit to debating her at least one time?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'd want to. I think it's important. I would be willing to do more than one debate, actually.
And maybe 3. We shall see. I know the left wanted Kamala to debate J.D. Vance 6 times. And the Trump campaign said, don't accept anything. We don't know who their candidate is going to be. And he was right. He was absolutely right. All right, we have to get to some of the hearing yesterday, some of Benjamin Netanyahu's incredible address to a joint session of Congress, and we also have so many of you weighing in. Let's check in with Jeff in Herndon, Virginia. Jeff, welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, thanks so much, Mike. It's great to be on the show. So it was pure gold, that clip you had regards Kamala Harris, and not everybody is going to end up at the same place without our help. That's pure Marx, as most people can probably recognize. From each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs.
Yep.
And if we can't run her crazy, I love Goldwater. LBJ did him wrong, and the black community, as much as I hate that term, suffered because Goldwater was not president. LBJ made him look really bad with that warmonger thing. And in this case, you could do the same damage to Harris and that whole Democrat coterie and be accurate, of course, using this kind of stuff. So thank you for that clip, because that really added a little skip to my walk this morning.
Well, I'm glad, Jeff, but we got to make sure we keep pounding the airwaves with all of these examples of who she really is. They're going to try and repackage her. In 2019, she was named the most liberal senator in the United States Senate, and she had only been in the Senate for 3 years and accomplished that. She was rated more liberal than Bernie Sanders. And now they're trying to scrub that rating from the internet. And Bernie, I think Bernie's behind it, because Bernie's like, she interrupted my time at number 1 being the most liberal. I would like my title back, please. So maybe Bernie gets his title back if they scrub it. But all we have to do is keep telling people and showing them who she is in her own words. And that really will hopefully right the ship in the polls.
Well, if I might add one more thing, election integrity is everything in this election, and we can't be bitten twice. Because I'm also hearing a lot of, while the people are saying, hey, but we can't take our pack off, we got to play like we're 10 points behind. But we're still with glee at the idiocy of Kamala Harris and whoever, she's going to pick as VP. And it's like they put an idiot in, the village idiot in the White House in 2020. However you want to discuss how that happened, a separate discussion. They did that. They won that, and they did damage to it. And they could do it again if we don't stay on election integrity.
Well, that's why I'm encouraging everybody to be part of Election Day monitoring. There are projects in every state, and I think it's called protectthevote.org, protectthevote.org or .com, where you can volunteer to be a poll watcher. We also have to bank votes early. We can't wait till Election Day this time. We have to do what the Democrats did. And I'm up against the clock, Jeff. But thank you. Thank you for great clarity. Thank you. There he goes, and here I go. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show, and Mike Opelka is my name, sitting in for my friend Chris Plant. I want to make sure I correct mistakes when I make them. If you want to be involved in making sure the elections are free and fair, and you want to be an Election Day poll watcher, I encourage you, protectthevote.com. It's not .org. Protectthevote.com. And they train you and show you how to do everything. It's a good thing to do, a little public service on one day. And, you know, a guy that grew up in Chicago, as I did, election security is kind of important. Yeah, really important. Speaking of Chicago and Illinois and the great WLS, where my buddy Ray is listening today, sent me a message. Hey, Ray, let's talk to Fred in Illinois. Hello, Fred. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show. Oh, he dropped. Well, let's stay in Illinois. We'll go to Brad in Lombard, Illinois. Hello, Brad. Do we have Brad? Yeah, I hear you now. Welcome, sir.
Hey, I was just thinking that the Democrats' only chance of winning is through a lot of cheating. And I was hoping that the Republicans would advertise that they will prosecute illegal voters. Advertise like crazy. If you get a ballot and you can't use it, and you get it harvested or whatever, it still has your name on it, you will be prosecuted and deported.
I would be hoping, I'd hope that would happen, but I have little faith. That's why I want citizen monitors. And I do believe that we need to play the same game the Democrats played with early voting this time to make sure that we have a margin of victory that is too big to rig, as Donald Trump has said. And then we can go back to election day is election day and not election month. And election day is paper ballots, and you have to show an ID, and you don't get a voter registration card when you come into any government aid office. We need to fix our election process ASAP. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.